Are we ready to begin? Welcome, everyone. I'd like to welcome everyone to the September 18th Workforce Education Course Manual Advisory Committee meeting. My name is Jeff Parks, and I'd like to go around the room and have everyone introduce themselves. And let's see, I guess we'll start with Dwayne over here, and then we'll head around the room. Thank you.
Dwayne Shaw, the Industrial Technologies Department Chair for Kilgore College.
Good morning, I'm Joe Arrington. I'm Division Chair for Human Services and Education at McLennan.
Hello everyone, I'm Rob Blair. I'm Dean of Technical Education at South Plains College.
Hi, I'm Rhonda Dozier, Cosmetology Program Coordinator, Texarkana College.
Cindy Kasparis, Vice President of Academic Affairs at Angelina College.
Good morning, Phil Nicotera, President of Coleman College of Health Sciences, Houston Community College.
Good morning, Joyce Williams, Dallas County Community College District Associate Vice Chancellor, Workforce and Community Initiatives.
Good morning, I'm Jeff Parks. I'm the Dean of Business and Technology and the Interim Dean of Administration at San Jacinto College. I had to throw that in because of the fact that we got all this stuff coming at us. We love the attention, but I'd like to welcome everybody here today. Thank you.
Good morning, Cindy Griffith, Vice President of Instruction for Alvin Community College.
Good morning, Jennifer Myers, Associate Dean of Workforce Education, Odessa College.
Hi everyone, Eileen Hamby, Navarro College, Executive Dean of Workforce.
Good morning, Troy DeFreitas, Department Chair for Welding Technology at Austin Community College.
Good morning, Mary Adams, at Texas State Technical College, Director of Curriculum.
James Chigwin, Associate Professor of Computer Science, Tarrant County College.
Rafael Reseda, VP at Alamo College's St. Philip's College.
I'm Dina Yarwer, Coordinator of Registrar Records and State Reporting, representing TACRO, and I'm from TJC.
Frank Grace, Dean of Workforce and Public Service, McLennan Community College.
Good morning. Linda Head, Associate Vice Chancellor, Workforce Education, Corporate Partnerships, Lone Star College.
And since they don't have microphones and since we are webcasting the meeting, if it's okay, I'll go ahead and introduce and they can wave or they can stand up and come to the microphone. But Donna Carlin, Assistant Director of Workforce, Dwayne Hiller, who's a mystery to all of y'all, Program Director, sometimes known as the Grand Poobah of WECM, and Elizabeth Steele, Program Director, all in Workforce, and then Gary Tomerlin, Deputy Assistant Commissioner, Workforce here at the Coordinating Board.
Okay, before we get started, one thing that I'd like to do is, on behalf of the people along the Gulf Coast, all the colleges and people that work down there, one thing that I'd like to say is the outpouring of support that we've received over the last few weeks since Hurricane Harvey. Living in a house that the water was within about 4 feet on Saturday night, and I was sitting in my garage with my dog at about 2:30 in the morning watching the water coming up. It's amazing how much stress that puts on your life. And so I just appreciate everyone that reached out by text, by email, and it was a very heartwarming thing to have happen, to live through that and to understand that everybody across the state supported us. So like I said, just on behalf of all of us in the Gulf Coast area, thank you very much. So we'll get started with things. So I'll call this meeting to order. And let's take a look at the minutes, and I'm looking for a review of the minutes and the approval of the minutes.
Hey, Jeff, if I could, just while
Yes,
everybody
Gary.
started doing that, just the reminder that the meeting is being webcast and recorded, and it will last forever and ever from now until the end of known time. And so just always like to put that out there for the group so that you are either forewarned or fair warned or whatever other point of view you want to add to it.
Thank you, Gary.
Excuse me, Jeff.
Yes.
In the minutes, it says Linda Head's on Team 3, but I actually participated in Team 2. Don't know
Okay.
if it's a big deal, but.
Can I entertain a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move that the minutes be accepted with the amended change, that Linda Head be changed from Team 3 to Team 2.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second the motion.
There's a second. Any further discussion? Okay, we'll call the question. All those in favor, say aye. Opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, motion carries. The minutes are approved. All right. Item number 3 on the agenda, public testimony on agenda items. Is there any public testimony? Nope. Okay, we will move on. I got an official nopey-dopey from the coordinating board. You like that? I'm good. I'm glad you like that. Number 4, let's move on to the coordinating board update. Gary?
The password for the Education Go Get It Wi-Fi access is there is no password. So if you want to use your electronic device during the meeting, that was the first question that was asked of me. So I just thought I would share that with the group. Maybe I should follow up with Jeff's comments about Hurricane Harvey. We've been in conversation with some of the Gulf Coast colleges, trying to understand collectively the damage. Is it not working? How's that? Collectively trying to understand the impact to the schools, enrollment, those type of issues. But then the governor basically directed the commissioners of higher education, public education, and workforce to rebuild Texas. And so we have had quite a little bit going on here the past 2 or 3 weeks or so, trying to work with the building and construction trade organizations, Texas Association of Builders, the Associated Builder Contractors of Texas, ABC, and then with some of the colleges, not all the colleges in the Gulf Coast area, but we had a very informative conference call a couple of weeks ago, and it involved all the agencies that I mentioned earlier, plus the Texas Veterans Commission, trying to get a hand on what is the short-term need, what skills, and then we're working to communicate that, and then hopefully try to figure out messaging and that kind of stuff. So there's going to be a lot of construction demand in the coastal areas. And so as we continue to work on that, we'll continue to share that. Probably mention from the legislative point of view, Senate Bill 2118, which authorized baccalaureate programs at selected community colleges. The draft application is on our website. The draft rules that will operationalize that bill are also on our website. We sent information to the presidents, the vice presidents, and the liaisons. I believe we sent that either August 31st or September 1st, so that should be out there and should be available. And we have some initial letters of intent. We're continuing to meet with the Board of Nursing and trying to get the entire process solidified so that everybody can go forward. I guess I should also mention SACS in there as well. We've had conversations with SACS and the nursing accrediting organizations. So we understand the sense of urgency from the colleges of their desire to implement these programs. But then if you've read Senate Bill 2118, it is a very complex piece of legislation with lots of nuances. So Oh, there's also a PowerPoint presentation out there, and that PowerPoint was developed and presented to selected presidents at TAC on or around August 31st. I don't remember the date. Did somebody say Gary? Okay, I'm hearing things. House Bill 2994, that is the continuing education bill. We are in the final stages of setting up to do negotiated rulemaking, and I believe that meeting is going to occur on November 2nd. You know, I was clicking on my calendar first thing this morning, accepting the various meetings and stuff. I think that was the date for that, but the committee has been formed, and we're moving forward with that. And there's tons of other legislation, but those are probably the two biggies. Any other questions, rather than me just talking about stuff, maybe?
Gary, going back to the baccalaureate degree.
Yes, ma'am.
Again, you said several community colleges have submitted those. What, in your opinion, have you seen based on that, the specialties in those areas?
Okay. All we've got thus far is the intent
Okay.
to submit a program. And I believe we have 3 of them now. We have not received a full proposal yet. And, you know, something that's new, maybe worth sharing with this group from a community college point of view, historically community colleges, when they offered an associate degree or other program in their service area taxing district, they just did it. But now the 50-mile notification comes into play, and you have to do intent through the higher education research, Higher Education Regional Council of the, and submit notification of your intent to develop a program and then resolve any issues. And just as an example, because it's the elephant in the room, if you want to do the BSN program, you have to do notice in your area and say, hey, we want to do a BSN, and those kind of issues have to be resolved. And by the way, you also have to have other requirements. Senate Bill 2118 has a whole section that is basically titled Special Provisions for Nursing Programs. And so it's a bit of a different process. And so we don't have any complete applications thus far. And just not to speak for SACS, but you have to go through the process of having the program submitted, evaluated, approved, and then the institution has to go through the level change at SACS and be approved as a level 2 institution. And so it's quite a process, and just even getting all those pieces aligned and having a methodology has been quite a process, quite honestly. But
Gary, just a follow-up question to that, because some time ago, the coordinating board used to kind of coordinate mentor colleges. Since we have a number of colleges, maybe 3 or 4 in the state that already offer baccalaureate programs, would the coordinating board entertain that those colleges are then assigned as mentor colleges, or suggest that they could be mentor colleges to colleges that are considering going through and offering baccalaureate programs?
well, I don't think it would be appropriate for us to somehow name them as mentors, but obviously, if any college wanted to contact those colleges and have a conversation with their leadership, I think it would certainly be appropriate. Tyler Junior College was the most recent college that was approved for a new bill, and so they might be readily able and willing to talk about the SACS process, the level 2 process, the substantive change process, all those kind of pieces. Midland College, I believe, most recently had the Health Information Technology baccalaureate program approved. I think that's the newest program that's been approved at a community college. If not, it's fairly recent. And Dina Savage is no secret to this group. And so just call her. I mean, I'll give her cell phone number if y'all want it. Put it out on a webcast. But no, that was my thought. No, but I mean, I do think, you know, one of the values of the Texas Community College system is we have lots of friends at lots of places, and you know, so reaching out and talking to people would certainly be appropriate. But you know, I'm quite honestly, I'm not going to give either Dina's office number or her cell number and say call her. But she's, anytime I call her and ask her for information, she's more than willing to share and help and those kind of things.
Any other comments or questions for Gary? Yeah, Rhonda?
Gary, for clarification, that 50-mile intent of the notification, that's just associates only, not certificates? The 50
No, it's bachelor's degrees. Yeah. There's no change. Well, yeah, associates do also go. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Any other questions? Yes, Frank.
Gary, on the contact hours for continuing ed, in this interim until the rulemaking process is complete, how should those colleges approach reporting reportable contact hours of starting September 1 till the rulemaking process is complete?
Well, I think rules are clear. Existing rules and statute are clear and fairly straightforward right now. I think House Bill 2994 really just kind of clarified and added to, but certainly students younger than 16 are not reportable by the new statute. They weren't, in the opinion of the coordinating board, they weren't reportable before, but until the rules are codified, you have to rely on existing rules, existing statute, and then the new statute, because I believe the new statute was effective September 1. Do y'all remember? HB 2994 was effective September 1. I don't remember the effective date of 2994. But, and I guess one other thought, as I see Linda reaching for her button, 2994 added, what did it call it? Foundational skill courses, learning framework, and maybe learning outcome courses. It had three basic definitions in there, and so I would recommend that colleges exercise caution in those type of courses until definitions are codified in statute. And maybe I should say this: House Bill 2994 largely dealt with enrolling high school students in continuing education courses. You know, enrolling adults in continuing education courses is fairly straightforward and largely unchanged.
Question in regard to the bachelor's degrees and how that will affect the WECM. Do you see, because we don't have 3,000, 4,000 level courses traditionally right now in the WECM, do you see a new list of courses coming from those?
We've had internal conversations about that, and thus far there's not a decision from the university point of view. Well, hang on, let me back up just a minute. Historically, what we've done is just have a process to where the colleges submit the upper level courses, and they fit in the category of unique need courses. And but I have brought up the conversation of perhaps adding the 3,000 and 4,000 level courses to WECM. I think there might be some value in trying to share those around the state, but all we've done right now is have a conversation. We haven't made any decisions, but that might be something that this group might spend some time on. Just generally, you know, does that sound like something that should be explored and what would it look like? But as I say that, I think we have so much work to do with the existing courses and the transition that's underway. I think that should be a very small piece of our conversation. And then I would say also that I would think whatever we do with the other courses, putting 3,000 and 4,000 level courses, I think they would just fit right into the structure. But anyway, so I think quite honestly we probably have time for a couple more meetings of this group before we really get down to 3,000 and 4,000 level courses. But does that work?
Gary, just one other point on that question that Linda raised. So the existing baccalaureate programs, where do those courses now sit for those programs? So that if someone is starting one very much like the WECM, they wouldn't have to duplicate unique need courses. So where is that database of courses for the baccalaureate program?
Yeah, they're submitted. Right. They're submitted as unique needs.
But don't you keep unique needs in a database as well?
I will see if we can share those, and I almost hate to say this, but it might be just as quick and just as fast to go to the websites of the colleges that have those programs and look. But I'll see if we can get them, if we can share them. Do you want them, Joyce, or does everybody want them? Or
I think it might be appropriate for everyone on the committee to be able to review those.
I'll see if I can get them and share them.
Okay.
I don't know what format they're in, so
Yeah.
I don't know how shareable they are.
It could be on an Excel spreadsheet or anything. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, if they're an Excel spreadsheet, I agree they would probably be easy to share. If they're each separate pieces of paper and I've got to do each one as a separate attachment,
Right.
So
Yeah,
So let me see
understand.
what they are, and then I'll get back with you.
Okay. Other questions? Lots of good conversation. Other questions on this? No? Okay. Let's proceed on. Discussion of operational guidelines for WECM. Last time we started the discussion of what we're going to do, how we're going to do it, and we actually broke you up into some teams and had you start to do some brainstorming. One of the things that we have to remember is, the whole purpose of this committee is to take over what has been operated as a Perkins Leadership Grant for the last 20 years and operationalize it through the coordinating board. With that being said, we're looking at setting up all the parameters for how this will operate, working with the coordinating board on meeting the needs of what we need to do moving forward. I'm sure we still want to keep this as a field-driven process that has been brought up time and time again, and we want to make sure that we continue to be involved in that part of improving this process over time as well. We came up with some very good ideas on items as we move through the brainstorming process. I asked everyone to go back in your individual teams. Linda, of course, was going outside the box and switching teams here, but that's all right. That's what we like about Linda. She's a rebel rouser, and work together in your teams to come up with ideas from your individual teams to present to the committee, and then we can move forward from there. Yes, Elizabeth. Oh, okay. Let me back up here for 1 minute, and let's do a little housekeeping for Elizabeth so we have lunch. That's the important part. Everyone has one of these in front of them, and you should be putting your $10 in there. Philip's using it as a napkin. Good thing money doesn't fall apart. It won't. But it was effective as a towel, I can see. Other housekeeping items, the restrooms are out the door to the left about halfway down so that everyone knows where the restrooms are. Is there any other housekeeping items that I need to attend to? Your car's dirty? Your truck is dirty. Okay, Gary's truck is dirty, so No, I was opening it up to the committee at that point. Thank you, Elizabeth.
We'll send it back.
Okay, any other comments at this point? Gary, if you'd like to provide some input from your end as far as the coordinating board, I'd be more than happy to hear those, and we'll move on from there.
You're talking about the list, I guess?
Yes.
Well, and I think this list was kind of the outcome of the last meeting of things to talk about that this committee needs to operationalize. The protocols and procedures, you know, the WECM protocol manual historically has been more about the operational aspects of workshops and how the workshops are structured and so forth. And as we discussed at the last meeting, and if you recall during the last meeting, the WECM Leadership Committee, Project Committee, had formed a task force, and they had came up with a series of recommendations, and they had talked about a process for identifying course triggers. And so how do we take the WECM protocol manual that has existed the way it has and evolved over time and transform it into something that is more based on triggers? We talked about we're going to move away from doing time-bound workshops. Again, during the last meeting, there was conversation about the letter that we sent out, and did the letter reach hang on, let me back up. The letter we sent out, and did the letter reach the target audience inquiring about are there any courses that need to be reviewed? And we got limited response. Was that because people are largely happy with the inventory, or did the letter just not go anywhere? You know, and we don't really know the answer to that. But so how do we take and start revising courses based on triggers so that as curriculum changes and evolves over time? And then part of this is procedures. Kind of jumping around here a little bit, under programs of study, the little bit of work that we've done in programs of study thus far, the committees are themselves starting to talk about the duplication of courses in WECM. The drafting subcommittee of the architecture and construction program of study, they identified what 4 courses, I think it was, that they were consolidating into 2.
They were
And what they're saying is that they, the faculty members, and you know, this
with industry input, because that was one of the main elements.
But what they're saying is that at the workshops historically, there was never a challenge or a requirement or a request to look at duplication. It was just more of the courses. And so now the program of study, as we work on alignment and trying to have more commonality in our programs around the state, they're looking at courses and they're largely saying this course duplicates that course and that kind of stuff. And you know, I don't know exactly if it's 100% or 95%, but the faculty are saying that I can still do everything I need to do with this definition, and I can do everything I want to do or I historically have done. And so while I'm on bullet point A about protocols and procedures, you know, how do we change the WECM protocol manual so that we respond to triggers and we respond to programs of study? And as the program of study subcommittees, work groups come together and they review courses, how do we make sure that their work is correct and viable and meets the outcomes of a, not the outcome, but the format of a WECM course. And
Gary,
so
if I may, that kind of begs the question then, how are we going to be involved as an advisory committee on programs of study?
Well, the programs of study are separate advisory committees. I'm not saying that this committee won't necessarily be, but we won't get to all the programs of study for quite a bit of time. You know, there are 16 career clusters. That's how we're structuring the programs of study. And so right now we're working in architecture and construction, and we're working in health sciences, and we've got about this far into health science. So we have a whole lot more work to do in health science, and we're not even having conversations about the next programs of study to tackle yet. We still have a lot of work to do where we are right now. So that leaves 14 programs of study of being uncharted wild, wild west, if you will. And so I think this group needs to figure out how to keep all of those other 14 not programs of study, those 14 other career clusters, the courses for them, current, relevant, up to date, what triggers there are, all that kind of stuff. But then even as we move, and this is sometime in the future, I don't know how far in the future it is, but when we move to a fully operationalized program of study model, you know, whatever that looks like at some time in the future, how will WECM, as we know it now, what role will it play? I don't really know the answer to that at this time. I think this group and others have got to put their hats on and think about it and try to figure out how it morphs and evolves and changes over time. And
if I may, when we worked on programs of study for the state of Texas for the grant that we oversaw, part of what we realized as we were going through that process is sometimes we need to revise courses in the midst of the process because of the fact that sitting alone independently, the courses are very well written, but as you start to put them together with other courses to make a curriculum, you start to find, oh, wait, if we took one of these learning outcomes and moved it to this course or revised this, we can actually meet the need of what the curriculum would be looking for. That gets me back to my question of how will WECM be involved, and I think that's an important component that we need to address.
well, and again, I'm not disagreeing, but you know, the program of study committees, when they're coming together, and it's the same thing with the field of study committees, if they recommend changes to courses, as long as those changes are sound, solid changes, then those changes will be adopted both in the ACGM and in WECM. And so, like the drafting courses that the group changed in the drafting subcommittee, those will be incorporated into WECM. Because, I think we reported the numbers at the last committee. I think we had 12 or something community colleges on the drafting. Y'all remember?
Wait.
This drafting subcommittee.
Design and documentation
Yeah.
subcommittee? Yes.
14. And I know we discussed this with the WECM task force while that was going on, before this committee was seated and started. Normally, the WECM field-driven course revision teams were 5 or 6 people, and we have 14 colleges working with that group. So, and we have business and industry. So it's. I think I said under program of study, one of the things this group has got to do is figure out, what are the standards How do you know it's a good WECM course? And then, when we go to those groups, have them write them and change them and update them. And so that's kind of the program of study group. And then, perhaps there needs to be a validation by this group. If there's, I think all that's coming to my mind right now is we don't want to be wordsmithing. If this group comes together and it's a representative sample of the community and technical colleges, and they recommend these revisions, then we need to adopt those revisions and put them in WECM. Back to bullet point A a minute, part of the whole process of why we're onboarding this and moving away from the individualized process we've done before is to eliminate duplication in WECM. As Elizabeth said, when we brought these task forces together, these subcommittees, they're combining many courses into one course. And bear in mind that
Who's reviewing that process then, when you're combining courses into one?
the faculty committees.
Okay, Joyce, you had a
Mr.
question?
Chair, I have a couple of questions.
Okay.
Actually, Gary, I agree with you that the validation of the POS process is well done because you have more colleges involved. And I tend to say that at a lot of the WECM workshops, there were 7 or 8 people, but at a lot of the WECM workshops, there were more than 14 as well, depending on the content or the zip code that was being there. The other part of that process was that the groups were actually identified based on SIP, so you had varied number of rubrics that were there of the same content or SIP code area. So when we're looking at programs of study, so that I can clarify this for everyone who's watching, as well as us, that when we're talking about drafting, and I'll just use drafting, and we said that we had several of the drafting courses that were now combined into one. You had 4 that were now combined into one. Are we speaking of a specific rubrics, or you are speaking of several rubrics that were then combined into one course? If you can clarify that for me, please, Elizabeth.
You should be on a mic, yeah.
Come up here for a second.
Hello, everybody. Okay, so basically when these groups were pulled together, and one of the things that I observed personally, I have not been in the WECM trainings or anything, but it was really great to have Dwayne there because he has been, as he was introduced, he's kind of like the WECM guru. So he is very familiar with the process and the procedure, and that was extremely helpful. What I observed, though, however, sitting in on these committees was that so many of the faculty and industry people there was like strong communication about, they really read these descriptions and really read the learning outcomes. Yes, one of the things that came up, Joyce, as you pointed out, was about the different SIPs and the rubrics. And so that actually became a topic point because in some cases, they were like, we love this description, we love this outcome, but our school doesn't let us teach it because it's got this rubric. And so that actually ended up being an element and a request change of a program of study because they wanted to include that course as part of the program of study. But one of the elements that they had to request was changing the zip code that it was identified with so that all the schools could have the opportunity to have that course and take that course.
Just another follow-up about decision impact. And that, again, is where you talk about the role of the WECM. The concern would be if you are having an institution or a faculty that's teaching in another SIP or another rubric, and what we've pulled together is the actual program of study that only identifies one SIP, and we're now looking at changing a SIP code which would then involve TACRO and others, as well as changing a rubric out of one zip code to a different zip code. That's decision impact. So when we, and it's decision impact based on an individual course, because individual courses are what students enroll in, and individual courses are the contact hour reimbursement, not programs. So again, as we talk about the WECM and the WECM process and how that folds into it, I think, Gary, you've hit on some very good points of the validation of the process and how we do need to work together, because the POS, the programs of study, will drive WECM, but again, they have to work hand in hand when we talk about decision impact.
Okay, right. And Joyce, let me kind of clarify a minute. First of all, it was one rubric. It was drafting. And then what the issue was had to do with a zip code assignment. And I promise you I'm not throwing Dwayne under the bus here. We've had this conversation. But zip codes have historically been assigned kind of more as a, oh, by the way kind of process than a concise, precise methodology. I think methodology of assigning of zip codes needs to go back to bullet point number A. But what Elizabeth is talking about is we had two courses that one was called solid modeling, and they were both drafting rubrics. One was called solid modeling, and one was called mechanical.
The names, yeah, but it had the mechanical code attached to it. So
and so what it gets down to is, because whatever zip code it was assigned to, like at the fourth digit or somewhere over there. A vice president of instruction was saying, no, you don't have mechanical skills, you just have architectural skills, you can't teach this course. And the faculty said it's the same course, it's the same content, and at the associate degree level, it's just basic 3D rendering kind of stuff was the conversation. And so the important thing is, as we are more concise and precise in WECM, we solve these issues, but then we are fully aware and cognizant of not changing zip codes blindly. We need to figure out the impact from a financial point of view, the 16 funding codes, all those kind of things. And, you know, there's no conversation about taking a nursing course and assigning it to a drafting course, or, you know, nursing and rubric and, you know, wait. Okay.
And one additional point I wanted to mention to the group is that one of the things that the program of study is doing, though, is once there is a complete program of study, it's not like the courses automatically go into effect. It goes out for public comment. So these programs of study, along with the identified courses, including notations about whether a course is new or what's been changed about it, are going to go out for public comment, so everyone will have the opportunity to review that and take that point into consideration.
Should those courses not come to this committee before they're sent out for public notice?
Well, and that's part of what is coming up as in discussing with your procedures. You know, we're not sure, do we want to have that where those courses are developed, they come to this committee, and we don't know how frequently you're meeting. Will that delay the process, or you all establishing a specific procedure that must be followed in the development or any kind of revision that would happen to these courses?
Well, we meet quarterly, and if we needed to, if there was an emergency as far as a program of study was completed, I guess we could either call a meeting or do a conference call or webinar.
That, like I said, once you all establish procedure, then we would know how to plug in a step or not. You know, that was just, this is where we're at right now.
Okay.
I just wanted to add the work of Pathways in Texas also, and we're almost all represented there, right?
All but two.
So we're all, we have a meeting in November, right, a big meeting. So most of us are no longer using the CTE 16 clusters anymore, right? We're using 8 or 10 or 6, or we're all changing by, just for information for you, Gary, we're all changing. We go to 8 starting August 2018. I'm sure you each have your own variation.
That's when we're doing that as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
So our new catalog, credit and non-credit, will be using 8 areas of study, we're calling them. So we're all changing things at our college right now. And my second comment is 2 years ago, we all changed to 60-hour degrees, right? So in healthcare, Joyce, I can picture you standing in front of the room with the dental folks. You did it very well. I wonder if we should move that faster for a program of study work, the health areas, because those that have state accreditation, first of all, there are certain requirements that you have to have for those that have state accreditation anyway. And then those in healthcare, since we condensed them to 60 hours, I would think they're pretty close. And many of our hospital systems now are statewide. They're large systems that hire out of our accredited healthcare, and you have Philip, Cindy that are intimately involved in some way, form, or fashion in healthcare. Might think about
They actually are in
changing the order
right now.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Good. Thank you.
And that's a good point, Linda, that we talked about during programs of study, that we should be focusing on the low-hanging fruit. Anything that has accreditation tied to it, or certification, or anything of that nature, licensure, we should be looking at those to develop those first, because it's pretty much set. This is what you will do. These are the tasks that you will have to complete during that form of instruction. So those are the ones that I would recommend that we move forward with.
Well, and, part of it is staff resources, from a here point of view of how many.
You don't have infinite resources?
Yeah, we've got the entire budget of the state of Texas at our disposal.
That's what I'm thinking,
If you believe that, but part of it is staff resources and working on priorities. Y'all, all the institutions, as y'all work on these guided pathways and that kind of stuff, y'all can have a lot of these conversations amongst yourselves, but for us to do it, it's a public meeting and a public forum just like this, and it takes a whole lot of time and a whole lot of effort and a whole lot of synergy to make it happen. Linda, the comment about consolidating career clusters and that kind of stuff, I don't know if the 16 career clusters is the most appropriate model or not, but for us, we have to have rules that govern every one of our committees. What are the committees going to do? How are they going to meet? All that kind of stuff. And the last time I counted, and I haven't counted in 2 or 3 years, I believe there's 247 rubrics in WECM. And so that puts somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 to 12 to 15 rubrics in each career cluster. And so the career cluster model gives us a way to operationalize them. If we went with a model of 8, as Linda said, then that puts 30 rubrics into each space, which is a lot of rubrics in one space. Trying to get the right people to the right table at the right time, I think becomes more difficult. But, Jeff, back to your question, and Joyce, part of your question, I see this, you use the analogy of the low-hanging fruit. I see this of 1, trying to develop the programs of study, and 2, trying to revise the WECM protocol to where we archive these low-use courses, which pushes us closer to the center of the road. And I've said this many times, I believe we have right at 100 welding courses in WECM, give or take a little bit. There are about, and I'm not a welder, so let's put that out there as a disclaimer. There are a handful of welding processes, stick, MIG, TIG, arc, and then there's iterations of it, doing arc welding on plate metal, doing arc welding on pipe, right? And so I don't know what the perfect number of welding courses needs to be in WECM, but if there's only 5 or 6 processes, and there's, flat metal, round metal, upside down metal, and then, by the way, to have an associate's degree in welding, You've got room for basically 15 courses. That's 15 3-hour courses. That gets you to 45 hours, plus the 15 hours of gen ed. You know, I'm not telling you 15 is the perfect number, but it does seem to me that there's some number, you know, that's less than 100. And so I think part of what this group has to do is those conversations. And then remember, the WECM protocol has always allowed for adding to a course. Now, we need to stay true to the course. You know, I'm certainly not suggesting taking a fiberglass repair automotive course and using that as a platform to teach automotive welding, you know, not saying that at all. But there's a lot of latitude in the courses, but I think those are part of our conversations. And then, you know, one other thing, and I'm not saying that our committees / subcommittees are perfect by any means, but before I came here, I was involved in WECM, and everything I've said here, I said WECM when I was external out there. Right, Joyce? And so this is not new, and I've been to quite a few WECM workshops myself, both before and after, and I do not believe, other than the 60-hour workshops that, the 60 semester credit hour workshops that were hosted in partnership with San Jose Central College, but we had a heavy piece in that, that I have seen 14 people in a discipline specific, looking at one rubric. Yeah, I've seen when the business, all those rubrics were brought together, and there might be 40 people or 60 people or whatever number was brought to the meeting. But then when you divide it into the individual work groups, I don't think I've seen groups of 14. But then more importantly is the last several years, the course review workshops, the teams have finished faster and faster and faster because they largely said, we've done this. Our courses are pretty well reviewed. And so it's time for us to move to the next level. How do we make this more robust for the state? I guess, and Jeff, I'll be quiet. I think I've more or less talked about A, B, and D. Special topics, local need review courses. If we're doing triggers the way we need to be doing triggers, local need courses should be largely, local need special topics should largely be a thing of the past, because historically WECM was time-bound in a 4-year sequence, right? If
Correct.
we're forward-looking and figuring what's coming down the road, we should be able to find a way to say, oh, wow, look at this new technology, whatever it is, and create the courses. I gave an example last time of sterile processing tech, I think it is, that I don't believe those courses are in WECM. Let's get a team together and let's develop those courses and put them in WECM. And then, as the other colleges get ready to do that program, that's pretty much the program. I would imagine sterile tech processing in a hospital room is pretty much the same from one hospital to another, which I think speaks to the point that Linda made. And that kind of takes me back to bullet point A of procedures, of how do we find a way to do this stuff so that we're more responsive and not following it up on the back end. And by the way, just for clarification, you know, I kind of said special topics, local needs, more historical. I didn't say they were going away. But I do think that that needs to go back up to number A of what is the process, what is the procedure of how do they get approved? You know, and if they're just a subset of an existing WECM course, and I'm going to go into the automotive field, you know, and I know Dwayne and Jeff are mechanics, and I don't know, maybe the rest of y'all are, I don't know. But, you know, cars are getting adaptive technology, automatic braking systems, lane departure warning systems, all that kind of stuff, right? I've seen the commercials just like y'all have. You know, maybe eventually they'll make a car that my wife can drive safely. But I didn't really say that, just kidding. And she's not listening anyway.
It is recorded for history.
But the mechanical brakes of the car probably are not changed. The computer software controlling the car that realizes, oh wow, some type of camera, infrared, something that sensors fires the computer, fires the brakes, right? The brakes are probably still the same, you know. And if we need to change the brake course, we can change the brake course. And then back to my local needs special topics. I hope we are not going in and doing a local needs special topic course that says this does everything, disc brakes, blah, 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 but it also talks about disc brakes on cars with adaptive technology.
Right.
You know.
Joyce has a question for you.
Gary, while I do understand by looking and reviewing local needs and special topics very closely for those courses that may be existing, I want to make sure that there is a clear understanding that the WECM does not only hold CTE Associates of Applied Science degrees and/or credit certificate courses. It also holds continuing education courses which are designed to have immediate response to industry that may have new industry that's coming in, that may be triggered by a lot of different certifications, and they don't care whether it's credit or non-credit. They want fast and immediate response. So that is one of the reasons that local and regional local needs have been done, as well as special topics, so that we can rapidly respond to industry and be able to use, again, as you said, those special topics as triggers that we can then look at associates programs or pathways as we start to look at that. Also, again, going back to decision impact, because you are aware and you work very closely with the Texas Workforce Commission, so you are aware of the skills development grants and their requirement for local industry, and that those have to be customized, where the WECM course or the POS is more of a generalized course. So I want to caution us as we start to look at special topics and local needs and look at what they're designed to do. And I agree, the review process of a person going into the WECM and just using the special topics or just using the local needs, that's teaching, that's learning, how we should look at that and how we now write that into the protocol. But I want to caution us about decision impact when we are only looking at one side of that, and really what the purpose for special topics and local needs was about being able to immediately and rapidly respond to what career and technical education is supposed to be about, and that's being responsive to industry.
And you know, and Joyce, and yeah, I mean, the CE courses are in WECM. They've always been in WECM, and I understand that. And nobody's talking about taking the CE courses.
We were talking about special topics and local needs. So it wasn't about CE, was just making sure that there's awareness that special topics and local needs are also used on the CE side to be able to be responsive to industry.
Yeah, and I was going on your comment about being non-credit, but anyway, you know, and I don't want to try to speak for TWC. They, as you said, they manage the skills development grants and projects. But in my conversations with them, I've heard them more than once say that, you know, there's a reluctance to quit reinventing the curriculum, and the same thing with projects through the College Credit for Heroes program. But I mean, those are their projects. They do those. We got more than what we can handle here.
Yeah, I want us to just be cautious about decision impact of what we do here has a bigger decision impact for colleges and funding and all of those financial resources as we start to look at stuff. So just as the discussion, if we talk about special topics and local needs, and I ask my colleagues around the table to certainly join in on this conversation as we start to look at how we will write special topics and local needs, how we will write the guidelines for our colleagues being able to go in and look at whether it's a non-credit or credit when you're trying to submit something, to look at industry, to look and search the WECM very thoroughly. And I think with the programs of study, and as we start to gravitate to more common courses, being able to then, of course, as you've said, to add curricula or outcomes to a course without changing the intent of the course and making sure that that's there, there will probably be a less need for special topics and local needs. But certainly that need will not go away based on the design of why they are there and based on the fact that industry, when we start looking at the new bills of Recruit Texas, when you start looking at new certifications that are happening, to be able to be responsive to industry. Of course, that is just one college's opinion and one person's opinion that sits on this council. So I invite all of you all to please join in that conversation.
Oh, Dwayne is giving me, okay. I was trying to figure out your hand signals back there. Okay. At this time, let's take a 5-minute break, and we'll come back in 5 minutes. Thank you.
That turned it off. Oh, that turned it on.
Welcome back, everyone. We're going to get back started back on the advisory committee meeting. We were having a discussion about some of the items that are currently on the list of agenda items. So one thing that was discussed, which was the pathways. Linda brought that up as far as pathways for the state of Texas. One thing that we may want to investigate or actually put together is a subcommittee that looks at the guided pathways and how those will work in with the programs of study, or excuse me, the career clusters for the state of Texas, because of the fact that most of us are in that 8 meta majors, whatever the particular colleges are calling them, and actually aligning those so that we're all closely working together on that. So what do you think of that? Do you have any questions on that or comments on that, Gary?
Do I have a question? No. Or a comment?
Do you have a comment?
Well, yeah, I mean, this y'all can take on pretty much as many subcommittees as y'all want to take on. I think the meta major guided pathway conversation is a great conversation. My only reservation is that we make sure that there's a level of commonality and alignment with those field efforts versus the field of study effort and the program of study effort. Primarily from a field of study point of view, which is not this committee, those are done in partnership with the universities, and those are state law. So a board-approved field of study, like the recently approved field of study in nursing, guarantees transferability. All the community colleges doing meta majors, while good work, doesn't quite carry that. But then I think from a program of study point of view, the meta major conversation in the technical areas, if everybody all of a sudden adopted very similar welding programs, I don't know why we're picking on welding today, but with 12 out of the 15 courses the same, and then the vast majority of the other credit welding courses would just idle in WECM, that's not a bad thing. But I assume Houston probably needs an underwater welding course that Midland doesn't need, and so not an underwater joke about them being flooded right now just because of the Houston coastal, all the kind of things. And I don't know, maybe there's something about welding about when you live in the desert. I'm not real sure what that would be, but anyway, like I said, I'm not a welder. But I think a lot of the conversation from the field helps this from both sides. And kind of as Elizabeth shared, when we bring the faculty together, if we archived, 25 of those welding courses, when we brought it, made up number, okay? If we archive 25 of those courses hypothetically that are subsets of each other, and then you bring faculty together and say, hey, net this down to the appropriate 20 or 25, whatever the number is, I think it's a much easier conversation. But yeah, I think alignment is important. And so however that alignment occurs is good. My only caution or reservation is that if it's us and a subcommittee and that kind of stuff, we have to bear in mind open meeting statute and that kind of stuff. But y'all can talk about guided pathways with your institutions and amongst yourself and that kind of stuff. But then we do have to bear in mind open meeting statute.
This just begs the question, as the programs of study are formed for the state of Texas, how will they be implemented in the community colleges? What if we start to narrow these courses down in drafting as we had the conversation?
Well,
what will be the requirement from the state?
Well, there was one of the requirement from the state is what statute says, and
But there is no statute at this point that really defines it.
Program
correct?
study?
Yeah, that requires,
No, it doesn't require, but it, Education Code 61.8235, I believe is the number.
I thought it was, yeah, I thought that's what it was.
And I believe paragraph G, it says something to the effect, and I'm paraphrasing, that if the board has approved a program of study and College A is offering the program of study and a student transfers to College B, even though they don't offer the program of study, College B still has to make the student whole. And so hypothetically, you know, again, picking on welding, so the student has 39 technical hours in welding out of the program of study, and they transfer to your college, then the student has 39 hours at your college. You've got 6 hours to round out your degree, do whatever substitutions you want to do, and then finish out the degree. And I did 39, obviously, because of the 25% residency thing at Saks to give you a little bit of flexibility and that kind of stuff. And, you know, there's similar law in the field of study that says more or less the same thing. It says the block of courses is paragraph B of 61.823, and then paragraph C says if the student didn't complete the entire block, then it's a course-by-course thing. And so it's about making the students whole.
And I would say that across the state, I can't speak on behalf of everyone, but if we have a student that's transferring in, we're going to do the most that we can to help that student be as farther along as they should be in their program of study that they started at another institution. And so I would say that's a very common practice. But Linda, you have a comment?
In the program of study work, does anyone look to see what programs it affects? Is there any crosswalk of the 50 community colleges that if you're going to change nursing and do a crosswalk of some sort, if so, if not, who might be able to do that?
I can take that. When we're preparing for the program study subcommittees, we do look at every college that teaches that program, and we do look at their curriculum. And so we do kind of make sure that, at least on paper, they're all represented. And most of them, you know, several of them do come to those meetings, and we ask them, you know, what are the courses you teach, and would this course change or new course meet your needs? So we do get input from some of the community college representatives, and then as soon as they go out to comment, then that's when every college that offers that program will have an opportunity to make comments or suggestions.
And the curriculum from the different colleges are provided at that first meeting. So the school, all the other schools that are not physically there, they're there at least in paper to see, so the other schools can see what they're teaching.
Okay.
And, you know, I'm going to share, you know, or maybe try to make a philosophical point, if you will. It's probably not a good example, but it's the only example that's really coming to mind right now. But ITT Tech as an example, you know, and we could probably debate their good points and their bad points and all that kind of stuff for the rest of our allotted time. That's not the purpose of my conversation. But they pretty much had curriculum, and then they would go forth and implement it, right? Good, bad, or indifferent, I don't know, but they had advisory committees, and they said, yeah, this is good stuff, you know, and whatever. But I wonder, you know, philosophically, if we, meaning the community college system in Texas, had started from, and I know we don't have a state-centric system of community colleges in Texas. They're all local governments and all that kind of stuff. I understand that. But I wonder if we would started philosophically with a center and then gone back out, what this conversation would look like. You know, as it is now, and you know, I think you all know this, WECM started as a first attempt to kind of pull that closer to center, and it did a great job. And all we're doing now is moving to the next level of trying to have a higher level of commonality, look at the courses that are only offered at one institution, and if that one course offered at that one institution is underwater welding in Houston, and Houston Community College is the only one that does it, and even Lone Star doesn't do it because they're too far inland, I'm not saying get rid of that course by any means. But if these courses are subsets of each other and basically duplicate each other, like the drafting example we did, it makes sense to consolidate them. It's less for us to manage. And of course, more importantly, if we have faculty teams having conversations about course curriculum at some time in the future, if the conversation is about 100 courses, it's a fairly large conversation. If the conversation is about 30 courses or 40 courses or 50 courses, let's do 50. It seems to me that it's half as much conversation, because if you're going to talk about 100 things and they're all equal, or you're only going to talk about 50? And again, how are we more responsive? And if we have more commonality in whatever the discipline it is, if there's something comes up in that discipline, we're all going to know about the trigger at the same time, right? And it's easier to fix and adapt and modify and change.
Got a question, comment?
I do.
Okay, Cindy's got a comment.
So a couple of questions, Gary. What is the current communication route for changes that occur with the program of study once it's approved by that group?
Well, as Elizabeth said, there's nothing official yet, but once we have final documents, they'll be sent out for comment, and we're sending it to the Vice President of Instruction and copying the liaison and saying, hey, give us feedback in X amount of time. And then we'll consider those and look at those. And then just like the fields of study, the programs of study, once finalized, will be a board agenda item, and they'll be official. And then we will provide another level of communication. And we'll post it on our website and that kind of stuff. Quite honestly, one of the things that I think we take very seriously is we try to facilitate and enhance communication. And I talked about Senate Bill 2118, to where there was the commissioner, the deputy commissioner, and Rex met with a group of the presidents at TAC. And as part of that meeting, there was a PowerPoint presentation that was developed and all the stuff. We developed a memo, and we shared the draft rules all in advance with the colleges before we even dropped them in the Texas Register for comments and stuff. So we're kind of like saying, hey, if you have comments, go ahead and comment, and we'll look at them now. And then, of course, once the rules go into the registrar, they will be, the register, they will be, any of comments that are official, we have to respond to them. But we try to communicate, and once this group gets more out of how it's going to operationalize itself, and then there are changes or there are workshops, we will continue to push communication. One of the things out of the last meeting was the letter that we sent back in June, I think it was. No, it was February, wasn't it, Dwayne? Yeah. More February or March, asking, are there any triggers, or are there anything we need to work on? One of the things is maybe we need a close-the-loop process on that. Y'all brought that up last time. We'll put a close-the-loop on it. Not talking bad about anybody. I bet we'll get about a 2/3 response on the close-the-loop. But we'll do that. We'll try to follow up. And then, maybe one other comment. The liaisons were created basically just before I got here, and every college has a liaison. That's supposed to improve the communication. And so we're trying to push stuff to the best of our ability. And I shouldn't say push. We're trying to communicate. I mean, I don't know. I personally question if email is a good communication tool or not, because we all get so many emails that we probably don't have time to respond to all of them. But we understand the importance of communication, I guess is.
Coordinating board needs an app.
Do what?
Coordinating board needs an app.
So one other question I have is in light of the programs of study, how does the coordinating board envision the role of our advisory committees? Because currently, one of their charges is to ensure a well-designed curriculum.
Well, I think we'll have to figure out how that works. In my conversations that I've talked about this morning in the last meeting, I have never suggested that we get down to 15 courses in a topic. I've talked about let's just try to find a way to make WECM more responsive and adaptive to where we are today. And so I would think that if there's an appropriate number of welding courses, that they could go in and still have a well-designed, a well-planned curriculum. And so in the, who do we meet with? Occupational therapists? I think it was OTA. No, they only have 17 courses or something total.
They only agreed on 3.
Now, yeah, they only agreed on 3, but they only had like either 17 or 20 courses total.
Right.
So we already have disciplines that have their courses very concise. Now, they didn't necessarily agree on sequencing or anything like that, but they've got it down to where everybody's teaching basically the same thing, and I think they only have 20 courses total in WECM. So all of those programs are meeting the requirements in GIPWE, and they're accrediting or accreditor standards with only 20 courses. And so I think it's doable.
Thank you.
Other comments?
I'm
Okay,
starting to
we've
feel like
gone, I'm sorry?
I'm starting to feel like I'm in the Trump administration or something. some kind of crossing. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jeff.
Oy. We've covered 5 of these topics at the top, and so what I want to do is I want to open up to last time the 4 teams with Rob Blair was the team lead for Team 1. I think we got Team 2 and Team 3. I think we got those mixed up as far as you're 4. Okay, then we definitely have in the minutes. We got some teams mixed up here. I think we got the names right, but I just think we got the team numbers wrong. And Troy is on one of the teams. Do you know which team you were supposed to be, Troy? Because I'm thinking the minutes may be reflecting incorrectly.
Okay, I have on the actual handouts, Rob Blair was Team 4, Troy DeFreitas was Team 1, Philip Nicotera was Team 2, and Jennifer Myers was Team 3. And that's how they're arranged in the notes following the minutes.
Okay.
And that's...
Hey, Jeff.
Yes.
Question. You said about a subcommittee. What's the result of this? You just said, well, we're going to film our subcommittee on this, and
well,
we
I
just
threw
discussed
that
it,
out.
and then I didn't.
Yeah, I threw that
okay.
out for comments. So do we want to? Let me back up. Then that's a good point. Is there members that would like to be part of a subcommittee to review guided pathways in conjunction with what's happening with the clusters for the state? I see Linda Head, Cindy, and Eileen, and Cindy Kasparis, and Jill Arrington. Okay, we've got a team. Anyone else that would like to be involved in that?
I think the only faculty that's on this committee should be involved in that.
But you could still be part of the process to be part of the conversation.
Yeah, I could be part of the conversation. That's true.
Yes.
Yeah.
Would you care to be on the committee? Well, we would, I understand.
teach, yeah.
Certainly, certainly. Right.
That's the only thing I would probably say no because of my teaching schedule.
Okay.
Rhonda did.
And Rhonda? Okay. So we've got a team. Who would like to lead that team?
Jeff, would you mind, what would the team do again?
The team would be actually looking at what we currently have in the state of Texas for guided pathways, so the colleges that are working on it, which is all but 2 colleges in the state, and then working in conjunction with what's happening with programs of study to try to make sure that we're in alignment all the way up through programs of study. Linda, would you like to lead it?
Yes.
Turn your mic on.
Turn your mic.
Is your mic on?
I feel very strongly that it's very important that we be involved, that it started as a dev ed, achieving the dream and all that years ago, and it keeps evolving and evolving, and most of the new impetus is really the good work that the McClennies have done.
Yes.
And the national scope is a little bit different, perhaps, than what we've already been doing in Texas. The fact that we even have credit certificates is different than around the country. Everyone doesn't have that. The fact that we have a WECM is different than around the country.
Yes.
So I feel like a bodyguard, maybe, and a champion of the good things that we've been doing here already.
Certainly, certainly. Okay. So we had, let's see, Rhonda, Cindy Casperas, Cindy Griffith. Who else did we miss? Joe Arrington, Eileen, and that's it? Oh, wait, and is that it? Okay. Did you commit to it or not?
I did not commit to it because I didn't know
No.
my time schedule.
Okay. All right. And Linda, you're going to be heading that up. Okay.
Jeff, if I might, is it a concern, is it if a program of study is changed so much that it may move it out of one guided pathway into another? Because drafting went from, 4 courses were combined to one, that would move it into a different guided pathway? I guess I'm not following, what is the
I would say
what is
that'd be part of the
worry or
conversation that we need to get clarified.
And the other part of that, I think, for me, is that it's the same speak. When we're having our faculty come and discuss programs of study that are participating in programs of study at the coordinating board, but at our campuses, we're talking guided pathways. So to make sure that because if we look at what we've done as guided pathways, we've taken the 16 clusters and put them under one umbrella under guided pathways, or we split those up. But as the coordinating board looks at their process for programs of study and the clusters, because it's easier for them to work through that process. But when we look at guided pathways, we have liberal arts and CTE under some of the same guided pathways. They have separate processes at the coordinating board. So as we're trying to get our faculty to buy into guided pathways, and then they're also on the programs of study and the fields of study, then the speak is not the same. So if there was some way that they understood that their field of study or their program of study tied into the college conversation of guided pathways, because all of a sudden now that liberal arts nursing program that is a field of study and the ADN program that is a program of study fits under a guided pathway of science and health or at our campuses. So that's the other part of that, to make sure the speak is there, so that there's a commonality of them, how it ties in. Because getting faculty in the whole institution of a comprehensive look for guided pathways will help our students to achieve 2 things. One, getting through the program of study as a commonality, and getting through guided pathways within their degree hours, within a 2-year degree or 1-year certificate, or 2-year, a 1.5-year certificate of programs, to be able to do that, to have a clear understanding across our colleges so that our faculty, when they come to this institution for what they have to do, will not have a confusing speak. Sorry about the hand gesture.
Thank you for the explanation. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Other comments on the subcommittee? Well, thank you all for stepping up and being part of that, and if you'd include me on that as well as far as part of the conversation, I would love to be part of that. Okay, as I was getting into, we talked about it last time as far as the items that we had comments on, and then I asked you to get into separate groups and actually pull together items. I sent those back out to you. Does everybody have a copy of those? And I think Dwayne made copies of everything that was sent out. So we have the 4 teams. So to get to everyone's feedback, and as we move forward on things, who would like to start the conversation? Doesn't necessarily even need to be the particular team lead, but who would like to start the conversation on items that they had discussed during the time that we were between meetings? Does anyone want to step up and start it off? I see Rob going to his button.
I'll start.
Okay.
Team 4. Right. We talked about, I'm going to summarize, and we developed a template, and the way that my mind works, as I look through logical steps, then I have to write them down. We talked about last time on our comments is that we thought the WECM process has been working in the past. I understand where we need to, and agree that we need to concentrate on fewer courses, if there's that many courses in the WECM inventory. That's easy to understand. Also, part of the issues that from South Plains College budget was the expense of sending faculty to San Jacinto. It was very inexpensive when it was at Midland. That was easy on us, but it was hard on you. But when it came time to send San Jacinto, then it became very expensive, and took away from equipment and program necessities from that budget. So I'm going to summarize the way that we work this, and just looking at logical steps, we offered opportunity of and put together 2 types of scenarios. Original scenario where we talked about comments last time were from a regional perspective, and identifying programs of study or curriculum that's similar in regions. I think that's probably the main issue, is that it's not all the same across the state. And anytime you get, the more people you get involved, the more perspectives that you have, and I would think that that's probably is the main issue of the vast number of courses in the WECM inventory. So on a regional committee, it was just our thought that if we pulled together regional folks, and instead of a statewide meeting, just regional meetings, and you'd have more colleges at the table, but it's concentrated on the industry needs of that region. So as coursework is revised or added or deleted or whatnot, and in a regional perspective, then maybe, just maybe, 1, maybe 2 of those regional folks, representatives, could be identified and come together as a voice at a state perspective. The only thought that I don't think that coordinating board would want to go there. I don't think that I would either. But a WECM inventory from a regional perspective, that probably doesn't work. You're looking at it as a statewide entity, so you'd have to have some kind of representatives come together at a state committee and iron out those differences.
Gary, you have a comment on that?
Well, Rob, and I guess if, as I assume here, if you're talking about like hypothetically computer science, which I think computer science probably is the same across the state, because of its software. It's national, right? But then I would agree. I think as an example, and we were talking about this when we were on break, San Jacinto College has these maritime courses, and it has to do with what, Coast Guard certification?
Maritime transportation, which, gets into Coast Guard certification on the CE side and on the credit side as well.
But I personally think those should be in WECM. They're currently local need special topic courses. I guess local need courses.
Local need.
I think we should put those in WECM. But then I think from a regional point of view, only the colleges up and down the coast would contribute to the revision and the other process. I think there are other examples in WECM where only one college has the program. Paris Junior College has horology, which is the jewelry and watch repair.
Right.
They leave those courses alone until they tell us, hey, we need to fix them. And then if any other college wants to go into that programmatic area, then they become a partnership. And not being anything against you personally, Rob, but I don't think we ever need to invite South Plains College to review those jewelry and watchmaking courses or those maritime courses. But the constituents in those areas, I agree. So I think there might be a regional kind of thing. And then I also, back to my welding example, if there's an underwater welding course that needs to be done for Houston, I think it needs to be in WECM. And then anybody that's appropriate, because we do have some rivers and lakes and stuff, if other colleges do that course, I agree. But I do think it would be very problematic if we had some kind of regional workshops and then tried to bring those regional representatives together and try to reach consensus. Because I think you just have to go through the whole process again, my opinion. But I'm not saying it's off the table. I'm just telling you my first slice of it. But I do think there is a regional piece, and I think there are. I think I've talked about this group. I know I've discussed it internally, and I've discussed it with the WECM leadership group of what I call some type of volatility index. Those jewelry repair courses at Paris Junior College, I bet they have a volatility index of almost 0 because I bet watch repair and jewelry making and all that kind of stuff. And they've had that program, I think, since 1947. I think I read that somewhere. I bet there's not a whole lot of need to revise that stuff. But if there is, they're the experts. They just need to let us know. And maybe that's one of the WECM processes that we need to revise of. There are certain rubrics that are owned by certain colleges, if you will, and then it comes by this committee, and as long as those courses the revisions are well-structured and well laid out and, fit the parameters of a course, you can't have 900 hours in a course, that kind of stuff, boom, drop them in WECM and go forth and implement. So I do think there is a piece of what you're talking about. The same thing with the maritime, if Jeff wants to get everybody along the coast to discuss those courses and revise them, boom. But then, computer science, I think, would have to be done at the state level, as with nursing and many other disciplines. And maybe that's a good point, James, is computer science, and I've discussed this before, rather than if we decide there's a change in networking, that doesn't necessarily mean we have to look at the office productivity courses, right? Let's change the networking courses. And so if Cisco changes its curriculum, let's go change those 8 courses with a conference call some afternoon and change them with the people, the faculty, not me. I used to teach Cisco, but I haven't done it in a long time because I'm here. So I think those are some of the topics, are the processes, at least as I have theorized them. And of course, the WECM task force that Jeff and Joyce and, you were on the task force, weren't you? Nope, sorry.
Cindy was. Cindy was.
Cindy, and others, we've had these conversations for a couple of years at least, before we got to this point.
Okay, so as far as the regional perspective goes, then we're as needed or as appropriate would be included as well, so that's good. We referenced triggers. Really, I guess our suggestion, our draft recommendation at this point in time, or ideas, if just accumulated ideas, you might say, is it replicates the previous WECM process because we feel like that it worked. And then we added triggers to it, and we looked at a regional perspective of bringing more colleges together, more input from faculty together, and then selecting individuals would go to a statewide committee and come up with final results.
Rob, if I may, when you talked about replicating what was happening in WECM as far as for triggers, are you saying when we were going through the transition process or when we were on the cycle of reviewing courses in a 4-year period?
Conversations, the inclusion of faculty and personal discussions, negotiation.
Talking about how it was actually happening as far as when it was happening, as far as a cycle, or whether it was based on...
That would come from the triggers.
Which one is what my question was. Which one do you think you would like to move forward with? Are we... The transition, when we went through the transition this last year, we went through a trigger process that what we did is the coordinating board sent out the letter in February, and then that letter was looked at by all the college liaisons. After the liaisons looked at it, then they were hopefully having conversations with the faculty about the courses that were currently in WECM. And then they were to respond back to WECM through WECM comments to say, yeah, we're concerned about these courses, or we need to make updates to these courses. Or the previous process to the transition last year for the WECM was that it was on a 4-year cycle. Every 4 years, we would go through and review the courses that were in WECM based on particular time points. That's what my question is.
We talked about comments before was some programs need revisions more often than others. So it wouldn't be on particularly a 4-year cycle. It would be based on triggers of those programs that need revisions more often.
Just wanted to get clarification on what you guys were talking about. Okay.
So as also on the template, we just put together a set of pros and cons that would be on a scale of what would work, what wouldn't work, and came up with really our suggestions. As I listened this morning, I understand that we are here for the course revision part of it. One of the questions that I did have was on the programs of study, and I'm not sure, I need to know this as we go forward. On the programs of study, it seems like they are revising WECM coursework as they are developing the curriculum. Okay, so you said this morning that really this committee is charged with development of the 14 remaining clusters. Okay, so that's clear to me as well. So at this process, we're making recommendations on revising the operation of the WECM process with programs of study that aren't developed. You know, the longer we wait to develop this operational WECM revision process, then the less it will impact programs of study. I mean, there'll be more programs of study developed as we go along, and so the longer it takes for us to develop this process, then it will relate to less.
Y'all probably can't drag your feet long enough to get in front of the program of study process, because what Jeff and Joyce, from the time we started talking about making this thing internal to it was internal was close to a year, and not talk about it, because we probably talked about it for 2 years, but then once the definitive decision was made, it took close to another year. And hypothetically, if we want to start a new program of study in manufacturing right now, we would have to go out through nominations, and those would go to our December, January board as soon as we could get them there. Maybe, from an approval point of view, and then we could get them together, and if we brought manufacturing together in, as Elizabeth said, maybe, if they were approved in late January, if we could bring them together in February, and then almost as soon as we started them working, they would have to, we'd have to educate them on programs of study. They would probably start identifying subcommittees, and then we'd have to go out and get nominations for those and bring them together. And so we'd probably have them working in May, maybe. And so bureaucracy is a process.
Yeah.
And this is me, I think I misspoke, but you know, while I talked about the program of study, and it's not that I misspoke, I don't think I was clear, which I guess maybe that's the same thing, but while I talked about the program of study, they identified or worked on a very select subset of specific courses in the drafting rubric, in the construction rubric, and that kind of stuff. So the other courses are still there. Now,
They haven't been deleted or archived from the...
No. But, well, they recommend some, the ones that are consolidated and stuff, and that stuff's still in the queue and moving forward and that kind of stuff. Even that will go out to all the colleges before it's actually done. And so there's a lot of processes that have to happen, and this group will own the majority of the courses for the foreseeable future. And then I question, and I think I said this at the last meeting, I know the WECM task force said it, but if we get the welding program of study done and the welding courses down to 23 well-designed courses, you know, and I tried to pick a very small, precise number. I'm not saying we're trying to get to 23 as a target, but I think that group would have ownership and control of those courses and revise them only as needed over time. And I think this group would only make sure that they're in a standard form and that kind of stuff. You know, I don't think it's off the table. You know, before courses, learning outcomes and that kind of stuff was not as big. I know it's always been in the technical courses. It wasn't in the ACGM, but even defined, well-worded learning outcomes had to evolve over time. There might be something else that evolves in curriculum over time. I don't know what that would be right now, but it might happen, right? And so I think that would be conversations that would come up here if that, but I'm getting us out into left field there.
Okay, so...
Rob, are you recommending that we have 4 regional WECM workshops that then feed into the statewide regional workshop?
Yes.
Is that what you're
Yes.
recommending?
So
that you get local input, people don't have to travel, all the stuff that you listed below?
the local travel wouldn't be as much expense on the institutions. You could have more faculty involved in determining, negotiating what those courses look like. The alignment between the regional, South Plains College gets some long-distance transfers, but they're very few and far between. Most of the transfers come from Midland or Amarillo or something like that.
And if you need specialized welding in the desert versus specialized welding in underwater, then you would make that at the regional level and then bring it to the statewide.
The mindset is it's
Makes sense to me.
Yeah, it's higher percentage of aligning regional curriculum rather than crossed long-distance curriculum. You know,
And then you would also avoid 50 different variations. So it might help get the WECM
That was exactly going to
course
be the comment
list
I was gonna make,
tighter.
is- Right.
It might not be as tight as you're envisioning right away, but it might get it tighter because at least it'd be by region, and then you won't have 50 different
And more fair to students, transferability, there's nothing worse for a student to pay all that money and spend all that time and then it not transfer the program. So just a higher risk of being successful of transferability from a regional perspective rather than from a statewide perspective.
A comment. There might be iterations of refinement. I said earlier that if we have 100 welding courses as opposed to 50 welding courses, the time to review them and talk about them and all those kind of things would, in theory, cut in half. Well, there might be iterative steps in there of we go from 100 down to 90, 90 to 75, and so forth and so on over a period of time. And I hope that, as discussed, if we're firing this based on triggers, that we find a way to consolidate and condense. And as they've reported out, when groups worked on it and we talked about what's really need from business and industry, and Rob, you just said this from a student point of view, not to put your words in your mouth, I don't think, but if we have those conversations and we go into some kind of archiving process that we know what the process is, it's not going to be done behind closed doors. I think I've said that. Then we get there, and then eventually over time, we get down to a more precise point. And I think I've alluded to this. What if we look at WECM rather than the 16 career clusters? Because I talked about how we're operationalizing programs of study. But what if we look at WECM more of the 240 some odd rubrics and reviewing the rubrics as appropriate? I already said give Paris Junior College the jewelry making stuff because they're the only one that has the program. Somebody has upholstery and somebody has cabinet making or furniture making, Dwayne, right? Only do what? We have upholstery. Okay, I think y'all are the owners of that one. And if somebody's listening and you have it too, I didn't give it to Texarkana. It's a conversation right now. But and I think if we look at some things like that, and then even some of the comments y'all have made about over time, which courses really evolve rapidly and which ones evolve much more slowly, even if they change. I mean, again, I'm not a welder, but stick welding, I think, has been pretty much the same process for a long time. But anyway.
So
Rhonda?
Oh, excuse me.
No,
Rhonda had a question.
I was just curious, which program has the most courses in it? You keep referring to welding. Is that the largest number of rubrics now? Okay. Just wondered where a good starting point would be.
What is there doing? About 5,000 courses, I think. Well, I was going to say 5,000 courses, and then if you do the iterations, I think it's 18,000.
Yeah, there's approximately 18,000. That's what I did in my presentation every year, so.
It kind of depends on how you count it, but it's huge.
Yeah, I didn't count each one of them myself personally, so.
I'm so disappointed.
I ran out of fingers and toes.
And part of it, that's a question as we talk about the iterations. Some of the courses, and I don't know a specific course, but it says you can do it for 48 contact hours or you can do it for 144. That's not the same thing. And that's not fair to
Right,
students.
we continue to scale that back over time and eliminate the wide ranges. We were trying to get them much more accurate. The facilitators are doing a very good job of that, so. Rob, you want to continue?
Just to finish up, the two scenarios that Team 4 is suggesting, if you want to use that term, as an original committee, and you can look at down at the bottom of the page and on the back, the pros and cons of the original process. And then the state committee was another scenario, and you can look at the pros and cons of that process. And it just seems like a regional start would be something to consider.
Okay, thank you. Other comments on that? Okay, I think our food is here, and Joyce is getting hungry. Actually, she's thirsty, but I just needed to pick on Joyce. Let's take a, what did we do last time? How much did we take last time? 45 minutes? 45 minutes? Does that sound like a good number for the group? Okay, we'll take a 45-minute break for lunch, and then we will come back here, it looks like at 12:50 according to the clock. All right? All right. Let's take a break. I'm on? Okay, thank you very much. Welcome back, everyone. We'll get started with things this afternoon after the lunch. It was a very good lunch. Thank you for getting that arranged, everyone from the coordinating board, and appreciate that. Before the lunch, we were working on some of the items from the different teams. Rob Blair was giving his update from what operational processes and some of the things. Rob, do you have anything else you'd like to add on that?
I don't think so. I think I'm good for now.
Okay. Okay, so then we have, who would like to go next and discuss?
Jeff, I'll go.
Okay.
If that's okay.
Troy's going to go.
I realize I didn't send, Joe Arrington commented from our group, and
Okay.
It's set in my drafts until I just emailed it to Dwayne. But I'm going to kind of recap or paraphrase his comments. One was communications. He wants to make sure that key individuals at the college is communicating with whoever is making decisions on the different programs. Feedback to WECM committee, affirming that no changes are being recommended, not assuming that silence equals agreement. So basically communication. And then the second thing Joe brought up was linkage to programs of study. He wants to make sure there's broad agreement that there is mutual effect. Concern on how we at least become, how the process is observed. And Joe, feel free to chime in on this. And then also he brought up a good point, I think, is training about the purpose and the function of WECM. Getting word out about what triggers are. Make sure people understand the purpose and process of WECM. Beyond that, from Joe, are comments that we made during the last meeting. Thank you. I think align with that, making sure college leadership communicates with deans and department chairs. So making sure that any calls are not sitting on someone's desk, I think was kind of a big thing, communication. That's about it. Other than that, it's pretty consistent, I think, with other groups.
Okay. Joe, do you have anything additional? Any other members on the team with Troy? No? Okay. Jennifer?
Yes, and I invite any of my committee members to jump in if I'm leaving something out. Again, to echo some of the other groups, what would be the timeline for change implementation at the institution or the program level? I think the group was concerned about clarifying that expectation. We also had a question about professional development, making sure that the programmatic leaders really understand the process, how they can trigger changes or discussion. So triggers was another big discussion item for us as well.
If I may, when you talked about the lack of professional development and WECM knowledge, what are you proposing, or what ideas did your team come up with?
I don't know that we got that far in a discussion.
Okay.
I know that at our institution, there's a required training every semester for our department chairs. So I don't know if it looks something like that, or if we want to get more specific. But that's something we've done in the past at Odessa College.
Okay. I'm just curious on
go
this. Are you looking at saying that maybe we go down the road of maybe a Perkins Leadership Grant to provide professional development to individuals about WECM leadership or something of that nature, or WECM in general?
I think it would be wise. I don't think, I think even the training we have at my institution is, it's just enough to help the chairs understand, here's WECM, here's what it looks like. Make sure your courses aren't archived so that you're not teaching something that no longer exists, things of that nature.
Okay.
I hope that clarifies.
That does, yeah, thank you.
I have a comment on that. I think that's awesome. And we have so many changes in community college leadership. Just to hold a once-a-year webinar on the difference between the ACGM and the WECM and the WECM and the, I think would be wonderful for all of our institutions.
I agree. I agree.
We also discussed the potential need for a published, some sort of, I don't know even what you want to call it, a manual, some sort of WECM protocol, and that might line up with training for department chairs or programmatic leaders. And then we also discussed where continuing education would fall within this sort of reincarnation of WECM. Our group wanted to make sure that continuing education was discussed, and also programs of study, just the involvement that we have in that area.
Okay.
Can I make a comment? Chair?
Oh, yes, I'm
Chair?
sorry. I was, by all means.
On that point, and everyone else's about having that professional development, when I went to the facilitator in training at your college, or I think it was your college, the PowerPoint presentation that was given to us as in training, that was by far the best I had ever seen, and I actually took it back and used it as a training device at our institution. So if you could get your hands on that, it's really, really good.
I might know somebody that has.
You might know somebody.
That has,
So
has
it was,
that available.
it made sense to me, and I'd been doing it a long, long time.
Right. Okay. Jennifer, you have anything else?
No, sir, I don't.
Okay. Anything else on that team? See which team that is. 3. Oh, Dwayne and Rafi. Dwayne, Rafi, and Robin Garrett's, and she's on a boat somewhere. Can you believe it? Can you believe that? I tell you, she's off sailing across the seas, and I'm very happy for her. Okay, who's next?
I am.
Philip, you're up.
So we were Team 2, and will invite my colleagues who have a historical perspective, experience, and knowledge more than I do, but a lot of what we talked about in our group was on the agenda early this morning, and that was programs of study, continuing education, special topics, local needs courses. One of the things, we had a lot of discussion, I think those were our 3 main areas of discussion within our group. So when we talked about programs of study, and we talked about that a lot here this morning, probably a good half an hour, I think we're just looking as a group in how do we collaborate with that committee. And so let's develop some method in which we can be informed or be involved, and they can be involved with us. I think that's, where we would stand with that. And I think that was very important to our group because of the impact in both ways of the 2 groups and what we do. Second and third were continuing education and special topics, and I think Jennifer said it best. I think we want the same thing. We want some protocols, perhaps a lot of training to go out to the colleges. I think we also talked about there's a lot of courses out there, and I think we want to try to wrap our arms around those courses and see really what they are. Are they still needed? Do they need to be revised? What would be a time frame to do that, and how could we do that? And so, without being lengthy about it, I think those were the 3 major topics, and they echo a lot of all of the other groups that we had in earlier discussion. Anybody want to add anything that I may have missed from our group? Great, thank you.
All right. Last group? That was the last group. That was the last group. Okay. So at this point, we've brought up also communications to the field. We haven't really talked a lot about WECM comments. With WECM comments, I think there's a couple of different things that come into play here. First, WECM comments has always been there to provide an avenue for the field to be able to voice concerns, questions, comments on a WECM course. But also WECM comments, when we were working through the transitional phase, we were using that as a platform to allow the colleges to provide feedback and to provide their triggers on what was going on with the courses and the concerns that they had about the courses. We had, 11 courses that we reviewed last year as part of the transitional process, and we used WECM comments to make that happen. I'm more than welcome for anyone to provide feedback. I believe that WECM comments is an extremely important part of this process that needs to be that needs to still be there because of the fact that that does allow an avenue for people to contact the coordinating board and to provide an avenue and a conduit to make sure that I think we need to have some other radio buttons on there, but I think that's a way that we can provide that feedback to the coordinating board on everything that we do and updates that are needed. Other things on WECM comments that anyone would like to add? Gary, do you have any comments that you'd like to add on?
No, I mean, was there something you wanted me to say about WECM comments?
Do you have any comments on WECM comments?
I think I've already said all the comments I have earlier.
And we digress. All right.
Sorry, Jeff, on just I guess,
Yes.
Procedural voice. Do you envision everybody on the advisory committee receiving those WECM comments, or do you think it would be more of a subcommittee or a subset of the?
I would think that it would be a very similar process to what we did in the past, and I'll open this up to the floor. But what we did in the past was it was opened up to all the leadership of WECM leadership so that they could provide feedback on those items that came before WECM. What do you think? Any comment on that? Any comments on WECM comments? I would say that we would continue in the process that we had in the past. Yes. Anything else, Dwayne? Okay. We talked a little bit about professional development and training. I do agree with what Jennifer's saying. I think that's a very important thing, and that's why I just kept asking the question. I wanted to really make sure that we focused and got some clarification into what the team was thinking. But I think that's a major concern that I have is we do have such a turnover in administrations. We have people coming in and out. We have deans of administration that are in the interim. So we do have these changes that are happening, and what happens is sometimes knowledge walks out the door, and if we have no way to provide that feedback to the field, in some cases they don't know what they don't know. And so that's where we need to have some scheduled updates that can be either done by webinar or, like I said, maybe even through a Perkins Leadership Grant that someone would want to maybe apply for. Rafi, you have a comment? We're moving the mic over there to you.
Jeff, yes, I'm hoping that the issue with professional development, stays high on the all the organizations across the state, whether it's TACRO, TACE, or TACTI, that we continue to do yearly updates for the community and have, whether it's the coordinating board or this group here, to have a presentation. To Jennifer's point, if we're going to do it, it's hard to smaller colleges a lot of times don't have the money to send people to the conferences, but we need to find a way to institutionalize the PowerPoint that Rhonda was talking about, and maybe have it and make it the responsibility of the organizations to help promote the process and be inclusive. Obviously, CE keeps coming up, but we need to find a way to go ahead and make that part of each organization, to keep a slot open for WECM to be promoted and obviously do some professional development for the community.
Yeah, and I totally agree, and I think that would be a very easy thing for us to contact, the various organizations and say, yeah, Cindy's going to do a presentation. Did you know that? No, but a particular individual will do a presentation on WECM and provide an update, provide the training that we're talking about. We'll nominate Gary to be part of that process as well, so that he doesn't have that easy time and just take that time off. You good with that, Rex? Yeah, Rex.
Jeff, the concern that I have is also, I mean, obviously ACGM, some things do change, but we know that in the process of WECM, there's always going to be changes. And as we hire faculty that come from the field but have no experience on how to create a course, how to request for a course to be created, or even with CE, you hire specialists that's very well connected in the industry, but they have no idea on how WECM works and, protocol manual. What is that? So,
Right.
that's a dimension that we need to really push so people understand it. So we're not replicating courses as we keep hearing from the coordinating board. We don't want to create any more local needs special topics if we don't have to.
Correct. And we've even done in the past, like when Catherine O'Brien and I did it was a pre-conference workshop on everything from WECM to, and I can't remember what all we did on that one. We did WECM, SACS, COC, and coordinating board, I think is what it was. It was a 3-part pre-conference workshop. So yeah, I agree. I think that would be a wonderful thing to continue that process, and I think it's a very important part of the process. Thank you very much.
Could we make it a webinar or something like that? Because we were talking over lunch about, part of the idea of regional WECM councils is faculty don't have money to travel.
Sure.
And if we want to get all the faculty and department chairs to be able to understand and know what the opportunity is, and how we update course inventory and programs of study and those kinds of things, a webinar seems to work a lot better. And if it's hosted by the coordinating board, then it has more oomph.
Is that a technical term? Okay.
Yeah, it's in the WECM.
It's in the WECM. I agree. I think that, the more modalities that we can offer something as far as update and professional development, I think is an excellent thing to do and a very important part of this process. Good idea. Other comments?
I'm going to pile on, Jeff. So in our conference, we have about 230 participants. About 35 of those identify themselves as being new to CE. So the opportunity to leverage some type of webinar, because those are the ones that have the ability and resources to come conference. I'm sure there's others out in the field that don't. So the webinar and those type of things that we can do more outreach toward them would be excellent.
Thank you, Frank.
Chair.
Yes.
I don't know if you would want to consider, if this group would want to consider a train the trainer type thing in the event that an institution felt more comfortable having someone on campus who was perhaps the WECM guru central or at that campus as opposed or in addition to a webinar where people might be more comfortable asking questions, having easier access to a person who's on campus.
I think that's an excellent idea. And those could all be things that would be some good avenues. Other comments? Regional program and course reviews. I think we had a little bit of discussion when we talked about what Rob was proposing and from his group. Is there anything else you'd like to add? That's a no, I guess. Oh, you were thinking, okay.
I was thinking through with your question and what I had proposed. That
Right.
doesn't always come out like you expect it to, by the way. No, I think I'm okay with everything so far.
Okay.
I'm so sorry. How challenging is something like that to put together? Does that have to come from the coordinating board, or does it have to come from this committee? What are the guidelines?
Rhonda, reframe your question.
What exactly?
The regional, yeah. What is the guideline involved in creating a regional WECM committee? Is that something you have to do as a coordinating board, or is that something that would be a challenge from this board or
Well,
committee?
I think we would have to think through the process, first of all. And I know Rob has given us an outline of the various steps, but I think before you could get, and this is me thinking, I'm not saying this is definitive, but I think you've got to come up with a revised protocol manual of how do you operationalize all this stuff. Because all of the decisions and all the processes need to be definitive, defined. It can't appear arbitrary. And so then, as I've discussed, and we've discussed several times, maritime, it makes sense. It should be the colleges along the coast. But then computer science as an example, I brought that one up earlier. I'm not sure how you would regionalize it, but then I do think that perhaps use of technology so you get the local buy-in. I think, and I think I've said this still needs to be faculty-driven and inclusive. Nobody's arbitrarily excluded, and so, and maybe I should have a slight reservation if there's a person who just wants to come in and argue every point about every course and stall the process. Well, that person might get excluded. I don't know their name off the top of my head, but the process should be inclusive, but we've got to have it so that it's synergistic. I can't talk synergistic and collective and productive and all those kind of things. And so, I don't know. Y'all think of the process, and then let's figure out what it would be. But more importantly, I think several of y'all have pointed out the cost to the colleges of sending people to the workshops. That's one of the reasons why we took this work on. So I mean, and then maybe just to slightly rephrase this, just as challenging it is for the colleges to send people to Sanjak, it would be just as problematic for us to send people to a whole bunch of separate places and then try to come back and aggregate or whatever. But I think there is, y'all can certainly pursue the conversation and then try to figure out how it would work and how it would be efficient and all those kind of things.
Joyce?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to volunteer myself and Robin Garrett to co-chair a subcommittee for...
You realize she's on a boat somewhere.
I know.
Oh, okay.
For drafting some revisions to the protocol manual for this group to review. And you definitely can add that. And the reason I asked that Robin co-chair is because of the fact that she was part of the WECM leadership that once also chaired writing the protocols, and so was I at one point, because that passes on as part of duties. So I'd like to volunteer she and I as co-chairs of a subcommittee, and of course you can open it up to other people, but as a draft to bring it back to this group so that we can move the process along.
Yeah, I think that's a very important next step that we need to get on the protocols procedural bandwagon, I guess, and start to work on that. Who else would like to be involved in on that committee? We had one committee earlier. I don't even have all the people's names in front of me. Jennifer raised her hand. Sorry? Mary Adams, yes. I'm sorry, I forgot your name. Mary, and who else? Linda. I'm shocked.
That's why I call.
Well, and I will.
That's why it's called protocols, Linda.
And I'll definitely be involved because I help part with redrafting. This is the one for this year, so I'll definitely be involved. Anyone else? Okay, I think we've got a committee. Dr. Peebles has stepped into the room, and would you like to make any comments at this point, sir? You're good? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for having us. Thank you. Okay. Anything else at this point? We talked about also, we'll worry about that as we start to work on the protocols and procedures.
Jeff, procedurally, do we need to vote on these subcommittees?
Well, because they're just a subcommittee at this point, we're just putting them together, and it's not really a procedural thing as far as voting on them. We haven't even gotten to the point where we would bring those back before the entire committee, and then we would have to vote on anything before presenting it moving forward. Is there a need for a vote on forming of a subcommittee? Can I get clarification on that? I wouldn't think so. Okay, no. Okay. No. Other comments? Well, that was actually one of the next things I was going to do, was actually start to go through and look at some of the conversations that we had today. I think that we need to include course triggers in that protocols and procedures aspect. Every item that we've talked about today, I think that we really need to have as part of that conversation. Everything from programs of study to continuing education, communications with the field. These are all just the items. As we move forward with this, Gary, if we come up with some recommendations, can we add those to the agenda for next time that we would be bringing forward? And then would we be making those recommendations that we would vote on and try to move that forward? Is that what you're envisioning?
Yeah, I mean, y'all, you're welcome to input. All y'all are welcome to input on putting the agenda together. And the agenda is really just more of a document to give us the space to convene and have the conversation.
That I'm asking about the procedural as far as how do we move it forward to you guys for the board to actually go and approve it?
Well, let's as we get closer to the next meeting, and I don't even know if we have a next meeting scheduled.
We do. December 1st.
Then we won't make the December, January board meeting.
Okay.
And I've outlined our process. I mean, agenda items and the documents for the December, January board meeting are already being developed right now.
Sure.
And for not even having a draft document, you won't make that one. So
Sure.
I think your next meeting would be more of talking about the document and that kind of stuff, and then come back and move to adoption. But let's see how far you get, and then if it is something that you're going to approve at the next meeting, we'll figure it out from there, and then we'll figure out where it fits in the board sequence.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. I just wanted to get a little clarification there.
Hey, Jeff?
Yes.
Question. What are we defining as a trigger? Is that a natural event, or what kind of thing do we define? I think we need to define what a trigger is first, because we keep talking about triggers. So is that what the subcommittee is going to define? These are specific triggers, or?
Yes.
So what is the trigger?
Yes, we have defined triggers in the protocol manual, and then we've also redefined them as we've moved forward with the transitional process. And I would believe that that's really the charge of the subcommittee, is really to fully define that and have that in place so that when we come back at this next meeting, we can have a conversation about that. Other conversations? All right. We've gotten to the end of the agenda items. Our next meeting is December 1st.
Oh, Jeff. hang
Yes.
on just a second. If I can.
Most definitely.
Since we got y'all here for a while. I mean, we have thrown out, as we went through the various bullet points, the conversation about triggers. Some kind of review process for local needs special topic courses, and maybe review and approval, of a protocol where it comes to this committee, as an example. It might be appropriate before the subcommittee begins its work of what else might be included in a list of protocols? I've discussed, like, what if certain colleges on certain rubrics, and I gave examples. I mean, is the subcommittee envisioning that as a protocol? And then do we develop a list or some of those kind of things? It seemed like there might be some space that could still be discussed, or the other committee members could say, well, have you thought about this, or what about that? And then when all y'all go to write this new thing, you've got an inclusive list, or at least a more comprehensive list.
Gary, I agree with you because this list does not include information that we talked about earlier about the baccalaureate program, which definitely needs to be written in the protocol. As we look at that, this list.
If we decide to keep a list, I mean, if we decide to put them in WECM.
And a protocol needs to be developed so that if that decision is made, as you go down the line of programs of study, how that will, how we look at the process for ACGM, where courses are brought to the UAC committee to look at courses that are coming out of the ACGM, courses that are added to the ACGM, courses that are revised. Maybe that's a model that we use that come to this committee before it's gone out to public. So there are a lot of things that I think the committee would be able to look at and come back to this group or to this committee to look at approving. And I think in the process of being able to do that, being able to ask for input while the process is going on. I think that is also something that could and should happen. And nothing says that we shouldn't also get the input of the program of study staff and or those who are working on Perkins, because decision impact is all of that. So I think we should look at every aspect that is going to be impacted by the protocol as an operational level.
Thank you, Joyce. I do believe that those are all important aspects of it, and so as we start to work through this process, using this list plus the other items, I would ask that all of the members of the committee provide feedback to the rest of the subcommittees that we have now put together, so that as we move forward, we'll get everybody's feedback and be prepared when we come to this next meeting. Okay? Any other items to come before this committee today? Rex, do you want anything else? Okay. Very good. Gary? You're good? Your truck is still dirty. Oh, well, that's a personal problem. Okay. Oh, yeah. Dwayne and Elizabeth, do you have anything that you'd like to add?
Well, I was just going to throw out there, I don't know if to spend time now scheduling our next, or our following
We could do
advisory
that.
committee meeting.
Yeah, because we've got a December 1st meeting, and then why don't we take a look at our calendars? So, whoops, and I just killed my calendar. It's a great idea. Can you bring up the calendar? Oh, that's what you're going to do. Very good. So March would be the approximate time of our next meeting. Let's take a look at what we have available in the boardroom. Exactly, that's what we've always got to be worried about, is spring break, and is everybody's spring break. So our spring break is the week of the 12th. Who all's got week of the 12th for spring break? So if you don't have it, then what do people have for spring break and other than that? The week after? Okay. So then the following week. So basically the week of the 12th and the week of the 19th are probably going to be off the table. So now we've got the week of March 5th, 12th, and 19th off the table because we're starting to lose everybody. Yeah, does anybody have anything on the week of the 26th? Oh, Easter holiday is that Friday. Yeah, we might be able to go March the 1st or the 2nd. What do we got on the 1st, Dwayne? Something there. Thursday? What about the...
Yeah, there's a leadership council, so the boardroom is not available
Okay.
on the 1st. Well, this is for the advisory committee. Will that be able to broadcast?
We're in the process of having another room outfitted for webcasting, broadcasting.
Okay.
And we believe that'll be in place by March 1, but it's not now. But I do believe by the time your next meeting occurs, it will be
Okay.
done. The equipment's on order and all that kind of stuff, I think.
Checks in the mail?
Wow.
I was going to say also the 2nd. What about the 2nd? Oh.
It's a state holiday, Texas Independence Day.
Okay.
Y'all, I am so ashamed of all of y'all.
It's a state holiday that you're recognizing.
It's still Texas Independence Day.
Oh, okay. Okay. So March 2nd is off the table. We'll look at it as your spring break. There you go.
That's all we're going to get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about the week of the 26th? Because we got Monday through Thursday of that week.
Those two middle weeks from the 11th to the 24th, our schedules are wide open. I mean, we got a lot of flexibility in there.
I appreciate your flexibility, but we're not going to be able to help you out there.
About the 29th?
I hear the 29th is on the table. What does everybody think about the 29th? April, yeah. Yeah, TACT's the following, yeah, it's April 11th through the 13th. Okay, I heard one for the 29th. Is everybody got a problem? Anybody got a problem with the 29th? Let me raise the question that way. No, I was just throwing out another idea.
Okay, I was just wondering, because that.
Well, because-
It's right before the Good Friday. I mean, that's.
That's true, and most people
holiday
take.
Okay. We just don't know if you guys think you will have another room up and operational.
Well, I mean, I think you can schedule, and I think it will, or as I said, I think you could tentatively pencil that in for now.
Okay.
And if all of y'all hold that date, we will know. It's my understanding all the equipment was ordered in August. so I assume the equipment is in transit. Equipment might have arrived for all I know, but I know we are working on it. And long before the December meeting gets here, I will know if it's either up and running and ready to go, or we've ran into a technical issue and it's,
In which room is that? Is that big enough to hold?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, it's
It's
oh,
the
okay.
Lone Star
okay.
room, just basically directly above us.
Okay.
Many of
Yep,
you have been in there.
I've been in there. Yep.
The room holds about 30.
Okay.
And somewhere in that ballpark.
Well, we could tentatively put it on the calendar for the 1st and then also have a backup date of maybe the 29th. Yes. I don't know when TCCTA is. Is anybody?
Oh, it is in February. It's in February.
Is it? Okay.
First through third, sorry.
That's what I was just bringing up. Well, I guess March 1st isn't looking so great for a couple of our committee. Okay. I was going to say this is, oh, that's 2017. That's,
17, that's
okay,
why.
that's 17. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's 18, March 1st through the 3rd, okay. So we're back to the week of the 26th, so the 29th of, or what about the 26th? That Monday? What's that look like, Dwayne?
Did Monday not work well? As of today, did it not work well for travel? Monday?
I didn't have any problem with, does anybody have any problem with the Monday? Okay. How about the Monday, the 26th?
Lake, Texas is going on.
Leap,
Yeah,
okay,
Sunday through Tuesday.
through Tuesday. So we're to Wednesday or Thursday of that week. Well, let's take a look at February. We could do maybe the last week of February. Dwayne, what does the last week of February look like? Thank you for that comment, Gary. How about the 26th of February? We got consensus?
You do?
We got a spot, Dwayne? 26th of February?
Yeah, yeah, it looks like the room is available.
That'd be an affirmative. All right. All right, let's put the 25th of February, or 26th of February down, excuse me. Let's go out to June. June starts to come into a lot of people's holidays. How about the end of May? The last week of, oh no, that's Memorial, or Labor Day. No, Memorial Day. Yeah, that won't be any good. Well, what about the 31st of May?
Isn't that?
'Cause most people will be,
That's when Nassau is used.
yeah, well, no, they do it over Memorial Day weekend, which would be the Sunday before. That'd be the week of the 28th. I'm saying the 31st of May. I thought NISAD was Sunday, Monday, Tuesday.
It is. It
Well,
is.
that Thursday is the 31st.
They would have to stay here that whole time.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not saying anybody wouldn't want to stay in Austin for 4 days.
It is Memorial Day week. And it's also NISOD. I'm sorry, Linda. I can't hear you. Vacation with a question mark?
So we back in June?
Then we'd be back in June, yes. The first week of June is normally when everybody starts their summer sessions. That's not good. Yeah. What about the week of the 11th?
Yeah. That was Memorial Day. And that if someone's here,
No, Memorial Day is the 28th.
28, okay.
Yes. You were saying because then somebody would be here all the way through that Thursday. It'd be kind of difficult for somebody if they go to NISOD. Is anybody going to NISOD? Let me ask that. Maybe, okay. We got to. I haven't been to NISOD.
staying the extra day or two.
Oh, we'll see. There we go. Maybe we're back on the 31st then. What's the 31st look like, Dwayne?
It's all clear.
What do you think about the 31st? Anybody opposed to the 31st? All right. Let's put it down for the 31st. You know, I've never had a root canal, but now I know what it feels like. Trying to get everybody's schedules timed together. I could ask my wife because she has. Let's see. Should we do one more?
Oh, no.
We good right there? That'd be two meetings out. I'd be happy if we got 2 meetings out myself. All right. We got 2 meetings out. We got, I can't remember which ones. What were they, Dwayne? February 26th and May 31st, is that right? Thank you, Elizabeth. All right. Anything else for the good of the cause at this point? No? Linda? Okay. If we have nothing else, then I appreciate everyone's time today. We had a very good discussion, and we will convene this meeting again on December 1st. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
We have a motion, we have a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? If there is none, thank you very much. Now we will adjourn the meeting. Thank you.